All right, welcome. My name is Alvin, and I'm with Wow Inflatables, and I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about uh, insurance in the inflatable business, specifically insurance for the inflatable industry. Now, I'm not an insurance agent. I don't sell insurance. I'm not trying to push any particular kind of insurance. What I want to talk more specifically about is the effects that insurance have had on the industry in the last few years, the way that things are moving in the future for us in the industry, and how insurance is going to affect that, and make it add to the challenges. I can see that it's just kind of getting in a way, and also I want to kind of talk about maybe a solution. And I don't know if there's anyone out there that can work with this idea, that can come up with you know a way to implement this and put it forward. But it's a solution for the insurance side of it, and how to you know keep things moving, both for our industry and people who are affected, both the customers and vendors, and everybody that's inside of the business and knows exactly what's going on and how this is affecting us and how this is going in that particular kind of direction. um, I've been doing this for quite a while, and honestly, it's from day one, from the first time that I ever got into the business, I was kind of hit with this idea of how uh, the liability and the hazards of the industry affected us, and put us in a situation where we were um, you know at risk and needed to protect ourselves with insurance and stuff like that. Didn't used to be nearly as bad as it is now. But honestly, digging into the facts of it, I've found that um, the dangers that are perceived, or the dangers that are portrayed inside the industry, are nowhere near as high as some of the other stuff that's going on in the world, and the instances that are going on, and the situations that are causing you know injuries and tragedies everywhere across this country on a day-to-day basis. And we have all seen the videos of the bounce houses flying up in the air, and the kids screaming and the parents screaming and everybody chasing after it, and the whole 9 yards. And we know that there is a responsibility on people who are into the industry. If you are in the industry, you have to set it up a certain way, and you have to follow certain rules, and you have to do things in a certain way so that it does not create a situation where people can be injured, or people can be hurt, or the improper setup will cause you know something to allow someone to be hurt. Um, Obviously, you don't want to set it up in a in a busy street, and have the kids dealing with cars, just like you don't want to set it up and not stake it down, and have it blown away by wind, or set it up in a windy day, and just kind of risk the fact that um, maybe the stakes will hold, or maybe the sandbags will hold, or whatever. Those kind of things you have to avoid. You have to get out from underneath those kind of things. And I understand that. I think we all understand that we're well beyond just making the silly mistake of thinking that it's out there. Now that, and people do it every day. I mean, people who cut corners, or people who are using someone else's and not really doing the stuff that they want to do. And but again, that doesn't really equate to the industry, and the industry is the one that suffers for those kind of accidents, and are blamed for those kind of accidents. People who are in the industry, people who are professionals, people who push for this either as a side hustle, or as a business, and are trying to achieve something well beyond a weekend or something like that, know what they have to do. and they're doing what they have to do for the most part. If they don't, it doesn't take long to kind of point those people out. Um, but it doesn't equate to what is actually going on. And what is actually going on, I did some research. Okay. There are roughly 18,000 uh, injuries that are reported per year in the inflatable industry. Now, what I couldn't tell you is how many bounce houses are, or how many interactions with a bounce house that means. I can tell you that it is probably a whole lot, just given the fact that I know where the numbers are for people in the industry, and how many times they're getting things out, and how many rentals that they're doing in the whole 9 yards. So if you equate those to the number of businesses that are out there, I mean, there are quite a few uh, bounce houses that are being rented. Now, the other side of the coin is that not only are a lot of bounce houses being rented, and when I say bounce houses, I mean the whole inflatable, everything, the slides, the bounce houses, everything. So there's a lot of those being rented, and each one of them is not played on by generally by one kid or two kids, or usually there's several kids on them. So when you're talking about the rental of one inflatable, you're talking about exposure to many kids or adults or teens or whoever's getting on them, and that exponentially kind of ups the ante when you're talking about it. um, so 18,000 in a year is usually what the latest um, you know statistics are showing. And worldwide there was one death, and that was one death last year. Um, so in all, the industry as a whole, when you compare it to the amount of exposure, there's not a lot of situations going on. Now, I want you to think about this. I do a school event, I'll have 5 or 6 inflatables there, and throughout the day, we will literally go through several hundred kids. So, I mean, the interaction from bounce house to number of kids is just huge. It's exponential. Festivals, fairs. We do college events where we do uh, tailgating parties where tons of kids are coming and playing on the inflatables. Um, so it's not just one, it's not just two, it's just tons and tons and tons of kids that are having those interactions. But I started doing some research on some of the other stuff that was going on. Um, and I thought, well, trampolines would probably be a good example. Now, you could argue that there are probably more trampolines in America than there are bounce houses, and I would say that there probably are. But I would also argue that the exposure to a trampoline is much less, you know, frequent than those of the inflatables, because if you rent an inflatable, if you use an inflatable, then you're going to use it. You're not going to It's not going to sit in the yard all year and not be used. Uh, and an inflatable is also you know not like a trampoline, in that a trampoline is generally enclosed to families, or maybe the friends, the neighborhood kids will come over and play. But it's not like a situation where tons of kids can come from all over and play on an inflatable at a festival or at a party or an event or something like that. So anyway, the number of injuries on a trampoline was over 100,000. Now, 18,000 for inflatables, 100,000 for trampolines. There were 2 deaths on a trampoline. And again, this is in a year's time. More deaths and 5 times as many injuries. Now, again, I would venture to say that the interactions, toe for toe, the interactions between inflatables and trampolines is probably, you know, within a ballpark. But let's just say that it's much, much less, and that the injuries are going to be comparable or whatever. So I started looking at other stuff, and um, swing sets, which is another backyard thing. And again, exactly the same situation as you're talking about with trampolines. Generally, it's an enclosed yard. The exposure is limited to kids or the neighbors, and most of the time they don't play on it as much as they would. I mean, I've seen trampolines and play sets and stuff that sit in backyards and stay in backyards for, you know, spider webs growing on them and the whole 9 yards. There's just not a lot of exposure to them. Once the kids have done it and played with it, then they kind of move on. And unless they have somebody that's coming in and saying, "Hey, let's play on the trampoline or let's play on the swing set," there's just not a lot going on there. So 200,000 for a swing set and 15 deaths. I mean, the numbers again. I can't equate the dangers. Um, then I looked at bicycles, and bicycles have 300,000 injuries, in excess of 300,000 injuries, and equated to 300 deaths um, in a year's time. Now, bicycles sometimes go out in the roads, and sometimes there's traffic involved, so that may have a lot to do with it. And also, kids, you can go pretty fast on a bike, and if you're going down a hill and you're not wearing a helmet and you fall off or whatever, you can have a traumatic injury without a car. So all that is understood, but again, the risk there seems disproportionate to the risk that is on a bounce house, and yet uh, you know I don't see any extra insurance being sold because people own bicycles or trampolines, and there may be a stipulation in homeowners insurance that you can't have a trampoline or whatever, or you can't have a bicycle or whatever. I've seen it where they said they can't have dogs and things like that. So that's probably a thing. But I know growing up, we had all of that, all of the above, and we never had any kind of, and we fell off and we hurt ourselves and we did all the other stuff, and we dealt with it. We went to the doctor, or we didn't go to the doctor, and we were kind of patched up at home, or whatever happens. Um, the kicker was when I started looking at youth sports. Now, when you're talking about youth sports, um, there's a lot of situations going on there. All the teams have multiple members on them. All the multiple members have, there's multiple sports and multiple age groups in the whole 9 yards. But then I started thinking the same thing is true for bounce houses. There's generally a lot of people on them. There's generally different age groups that you have different kind of inflatables that are going to, and they may have 10 or 12 games a year, and then plus practices and stuff like that. So, and within a group of that size, you can have, 10 or 12 rentals. So it doesn't equate. I don't know, but 3.5 million injuries were reported in youth sports and 5 deaths. So, I mean, that has got to be a lot more dangerous than an inflatable. Yet again, the mitigation of liability is there, and the liability is definitely placed on the parents, and unless there's just something that's just totally crazy going on, a coach making them practice without equipment, or making them do, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't imagine. But the fact of the matter is that it's not something that you get into on a day-to-day basis. But we do see these injuries all the time. We hear about it on TV. We see about it, all the way up to college kids, where they were hit wrong or something like that, and they go down, or whatever's going on, plus the traumatic brain injuries that they've been studying from impacts with the helmets on with football, and the everything that goes along with it. Heat exhaustion, and twisted ankles and broken arms, and everything goes along with it. And all of those things that are put out there, the inflatable industry is the only one that holds the amount of liability that it does in the area of the liability that it does, simply because I'm bringing the inflatable to you, or you're bringing your children and putting them on my inflatable at someone's house, or whatever's going on. So the liability falls more as an aspect of the ownership, and less of the fact that there's a risk or a danger, or something that needs to be addressed as far as what's going on. I don't think that inflatables are such a risk that they create this inevitable injury, or whatever, to kids that are participating with their use. But at the same time, I don't feel like we're getting a we're getting a good shake on this, because I just feel like that it's a different situation. I went a little bit further into this, and there's a skydiving company that is near where I live, and I know the people that own it, and I had a kind of candid conversation with them, and they explained to me how much their insurance was, um, and it was about 1/5 of what I pay for my insurance for bounce houses. Now, there's not a lot of people skydiving. Usually it's only on weekend, and usually it's a group between 6 and 8 or something like that. So you may be 400 people total in a year. But we're talking about skydiving. We're literally talking about falling out of an airplane, as opposed to bouncing on a bounce house. And they have had, uh, exponential amount of deaths in the last 10 years. I mean, I've had none. They've had 5 in 10 years. Um, and again, I know what people are saying is that you accept the risk when you go skydiving, but don't you kind of accept the risk when you get on a back? I mean, let's face it. You can walk down a set of stairs and twist your ankle. You can literally go outside and your dog can knock you over and you could break your arm. You could, just a multitude of things on an everyday basis. Um, and all the only difference that we're talking about is the fact that we are placing blame on someone who has ownership. If you own the bounce house, um, I mean, how many people are suing the swing set companies? How many people are suing the trampoline companies or the bike Schwinn? How many people are Red Rider? How many of them are suing those companies? They're not. They're not. It's not. You own it and you accept the responsibility. You write it. It's everything is on you. But because our industry is set up the way that it is, I own it and I bring it to you and I set it up and I accept 100% of all the liability all the time. I'm not talking about me setting it up wrong. I'm talking about you sliding down it and something happened and everything is perfect, but you landed wrong, or somebody else ran into you, or anything that goes on. There's an automatic assumption that you've got to jump on me with the liability, and I can't see how that goes, or where that goes, or how that equates to an industry that we are in. um and anytime that you're in the business for any length of time, there's things are going to happen. Um, and I understand that, and I can agree with that, and I can see it, and appreciate it in the whole 9 yards. That's not uh, on my side. I don't think that's something. And listen, I have sat through, you know, safety meetings, and I've sat through conferences with insurance companies, and I've been heard all the horror stories, and they've told me time and time again about the liability that we accept, and what happens if you get in a situation where you don't have insurance and you're renting inflatables and somebody gets hurt and they're going to come after you, and even if you know all of that, and I can agree with that and I can understand it, but here's the thing, and this is my solution to the whole problem. This is what I wanted to talk about from the very, very beginning, is we have a flawed model here. It is not so much that I believe that we, are liable, or that we have an industry where the inflatables are doing something that is causing an exponential amount of injury. If that was true, then if we were hurting kids, or if we were creating an opportunity for kids to be hurt beyond what they would normally be hurt on a day-to-day basis, and we had these death traps, or we had these things that were just literally just chewing up kids left and right, get rid of it. I shut it down, the whole 9 yards. But we're talking about something that's been in business for 60 years now, 55, 60 years, 65 years. And I mean, there's kind of a proven track record. Now, have there been incidents? Yes. Have there been injuries? Yes. Have there been, situations that go on? But again, I've showed you the numbers. Most of the other activities that are involving kids and things like that have more risk, or have more instances of injury and death, have more instances of situations going awry and going wrong. And what we're left with is, simply this understanding that you own the equipment, so you own all the liability. And I don't agree with that. So I was trying to think, how do you fix this? And again, I would really, 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 really love for someone in one of the industries, and I'm going to reach out to some people in the insurance industry and see, what we can do, or what they can kind of pull out of this. But what I was thinking is that what if we modeled our insurance like rental car insurance, where you can buy a policy, and a policy is offered to you every time you rent a unit, and that policy will cover that rental and that particular unit and the people that are playing on it for that particular thing. And then after it's over, there is no policy on that, and it comes back in the whole 9 yards. And if you are at a commercial location, or a church, or a park, or a public venue, or something where there's other people coming around, you must have this insurance. If you do this at your home and you accept the liability through your homeowner's insurance, you can sign, just like with car insurance, on your rental car. If you have insurance that will cover you for a rental agreement, then you can transfer that and you don't have to buy the insurance. So if we treat bounce house insurance just like rental car insurance, and allow each customer to purchase the policy. Now, what this does, and I think this is probably the most important part of it, is it immediately takes the liability and places it, because again, there's no, and again, let me know. We're not talking about, if you rent a car and they didn't check the brakes, and then the car doesn't stop and you run and have an accident. Obviously, the rental company is liable for that, and so would the bounce house company if they rented you an inflatable that was inherently dangerous simply by whatever they did. Um, if they set it up incorrectly, or if it's one of those that literally just by design is going to hurt you, or whatever, it has holes in it that you twist your ankle, or whatever is going on. And again, the insurance company can tell me we don't insure that, so take it out of your inventory or whatever. That's fine. But product liability aside, we're talking about just the proper use of the inflatable. They bought the policy, they own the policy, they claim against that policy. Their guest can claim against that policy, and it doesn't have anything to do with us. Now, what that leaves for us is a smaller policy that would cover, all the other stuff. Um, and I think that would mean less of an insurance on our side, because each particular incident would have someone who is accepting the liability, or a company that's accepting the liability. Now, on the flip side, and you may say, well, how is that going to work for the insurance companies? I can simply tell you right here and now, if my insurance company's charged, I mean, let's do the math. Let's just say that I'm a small company, and I do, let's just say I do 50 rentals a year, which is nothing. That's little less than one a weekend. Um, if they do that at $50 a pop, then that's $2,500. Now, I know that the insurance for a new company is around 3,000. But let's just say you get into a company that's doing 800 rentals. $40,000. I mean, I don't know. I know how much my insurance is right now, and it's not $40,000. But again, I'm paying it. I'm paying it all out of my pocket. Now, I guess I could probably do this on my own, and I could say, well, this is what I'm going to do. And maybe I find a lawyer that says, we're going to give them a rock solid, liability policy. And, I don't know. It just seems to work better if it doesn't belong to me, because then there's not an assumption of liability. If they own the policy, then the liability falls on them. So it really has to work through them. It has to work. They have to buy the policy. Can you buy a policy for an individual event? And everyone that I've ever talked to in the insurance industry says you can buy insurance for anything. If the money is right, the insurance company will sell you. So why can't we get a system going where we buy insurance for individual events? And whether it be a backyard party or a full-on church event, and they pay whatever they pay, $25 a unit, or $50 a unit, or whatever it is. Even if it was $25 for the entire event, I would charge less if I didn't have to charge as much for my insurance. So I could kind of have a lower fee on my side. The numbers wouldn't change much. The only difference would be, again, the liability would shift over to the owner of the policy, which would be the renter instead of me. So again, if there's anybody out there that's in the industry, so if anybody that's in the insurance industry, anybody that's a lawyer, anybody that's, wants to put this together, wants to create a situation where this works, even know that it's possible, let me know. Put it in the chat below. Let me, let's figure it out, because I mean, that would be, to me, it would be a game changer. Simply because it would take away that immediate finger point to me, and it would go right back to, and let's think about it. If I'm dropping a unit off to someone's house and the improper behavior is the cause of it, then obviously it leans towards more of a responsibility on their part. If they hold all these cards, if they have to have the insurance, if they have to have the and maybe it's backed up by their homeowner's insurance or their whatever, their church insurance or whatever, and the insurance company couples with that and whole 9 yards, but leaves me out of it because honestly I wasn't there, and I don't know. So I don't know. Like I said, if anybody knows, if anybody has a friend that knows, if anybody's in the industry and wants to, let's put this together and figure it out and see if it's even a doable thing. I honestly believe that it could be something that would be exponentially more beneficial for the insurance company, more beneficial for the customer, more beneficial for us, because it takes all that away. Again, it puts it right squarely in the place where it is, and that's the insurance stays with the unit and stays with whoever's with the unit and what's going on with the unit and the whole 9 yards. So anyway, that was my thought. That was my my whole shtick on it. And I would really like to pursue it and see which way it goes. You guys, keep watching. Let me know if there's anything that you need help on, or anything that you guys want to talk about, anything like that. I'm going to try to do a lot more of these lives and keep them a lot more frequent, so that we can have more people out there with information. If I hear anything about this, if I can put something like this together, I will definitely add to this and give more information on it, and kind of push things forward so that you guys will be able to benefit from it as well. I think that it's a good idea. I think that it would work wonderfully for the industry, and that we would have a much more robust and streamlined industry with this, instead of people trying to point fingers at everybody and say this and that and the whole 9 yards. But anyway, tell me what you think. Let me know if I can do anything, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.